Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Military Mondays. For those of you who do not know who I am retired Major Brenda Sanchez, and I am the co-founder of Life's Real Currency with my husband, Michael Sanchez. And we help businesses retain their current clients and generate referrals. And every single Monday morning at 8 a.m. Mountain Time, I like to bring to you educational pieces and interview military members or veterans or spouses of veterans. And today I actually have a spouse on. Katelyn is a spouse of Army veteran. And I'm super excited to have her on. We met through Polka Dot networking group. So those of you, if you're women and you are looking to network, if you have a business, I highly recommend looking into Polka Dot Powerhouse. It's a great network. If it wasn't for Polka Dot Powerhouse, I would have never met Katelyn because she's in Houston, right, Katelyn?
I'm just outside of Dallas.
Texas, you know, that big. So thank you and welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about the military side first, what your husband did in the military and, you know, what it was like being the spouse.
Sure. So my husband was in for just over 5 years, and he was in the infantry and eventually became a sniper. And it was definitely not something I ever saw myself doing. I saw myself, growing up, within 20 minutes of home, being very much a homebody. And then I went off to college not far from home, just 4 hours away. Came back a year later, got married to a soldier, who we then moved to Tacoma, Washington for Joint Base Lewis McChord up there. And so that in and of itself was a whole new adventure for me and a different perspective shift, obviously. And we really enjoyed it. Getting to be somewhere new, completely different weather, completely different, environment, going from Texas to Washington. And, it forced us to go outside of our comfort zones and to meet new people. And, there's a phrase, at least in the Army, of hurry up and wait. And so there was a lot of that in those 5 years regarding his one deployment that he did, when he was coming home, his trainings that he had to go do. So it was definitely a learning experience, but in all, we really enjoyed our time there.
And you mentioned a few things, but what would you say the biggest lessons you learned that help you to be successful in business today? What are some of those skills or lessons learned that you think help as a military spouse or a military member?
So I would say the independence, for one, between being away from my family and not expecting it to being by myself for 9 months while he was deployed. That really was helpful in just, getting that confidence in myself and what I'm capable of doing and surviving and all of that. And then also just that the importance of tracking things, because when you're in the military, if you don't have the right paperwork, it takes 5 times as long to get anything accomplished. And so that translates pretty much directly over into business, where if you don't have your systems in place or some amount, even if it's just thrown into an email inbox somewhere, that's going to really slow you down over time.
Exactly. And so remind me, had you started your business while he was still in, or is this is newer, right?
Yes, I started about a year after he got out. Yeah, I started after being a stay-at-home mom for about a year, and it really just started as a hobby thing for me, as something to do, with adult interaction and all of that with 2 young kids at home. So,
and
yeah.
And what is, so that I know what your background is, but for my viewers, what is your background before you were a stay-at-home mom?
So in the corporate world, I was in administration and HR. So a variety of different coordinator type roles.
Which fits really well into what you do today. So let's segue right into that. So you're a high performance coach, and what exactly, for the viewers, what exactly does that mean?
So the piece that I specifically address is business operations and systems. So I come into other small businesses and help them to really streamline the back end, those behind the scene things that are really hidden from view of your clients and your audience and all of that, but can cause a lot of chaos. So I come in, help them to streamline everything, make sure you're using the right tools, that your team is being used appropriately, those kinds of things. And then ultimately documenting it all. Like I mentioned with the military thing, if you don't have that documentation, it makes everything that much more complicated. And I truly believe that is true for every business, regardless of what you do. And so the documentation is a big piece that I accomplish with my clients as well.
Awesome. And I know you kind of niche in and you like to, you can work with anybody just like most businesses, but you have a niche and
Mhm.
a few businesses that you really like to work with. So who are those businesses?
So I like to work with newly to mid six-figure businesses that are service-based. So I find that that's really my sweet spot because I really like, there's a lot of chaos that can kind of come with that once you magically hit that number that we all strive for, right? That six figures, but it's usually not quite as freeing as we hoped it would be or that we expected it to be. So I like partnering with them to bring their business to that point that not only is it making money, but they have that freedom and that sense of peace of mind that they've always wanted to go with that dollar amount.
Yeah, I hear all the time people say what it takes to get to six figures is not what it's going to take to get to
Mhm.
seven figures. There's a
Yep.
big gap there, a big difference. And so you can help people get all of those, you can get, most people can get to six figures or close to six figures, especially in a service-based industry,
Hmm.
fairly easily, but then the overwhelm hits
Yes.
like, oh my God, I got too much to do. And so that's where you come in and help them to smooth things out and put systems in place that save them time and make them more money. Would that be fair?
Absolutely. And ultimately, it makes it easier to scale to whatever that next goal is for you.
And by documenting everything, it means that if you're ready to open up another office or another branch in another
Hmm.
city, if you've got everything documented, it's really easy to bring somebody in to
Hmm.
pick that up
Yeah.
and run with it. Sort of like a franchise, really. I mean, think
Yep.
about that. Everything, systems and processes. Why do people buy franchises or modern day
Hmm.
franchises? Because the systems are already in place. They've already laid out the path to success. And so that's what you help them do, is lay out that path to
Hmm.
future
And
success.
like you said, that's a great point. A business, if you ever plan to consider selling your business, you have to have these things not only in place but documented. Because if you want to sell it, you're not selling yourself. You can't sell your brain. So you have to have these things documented somewhere so that because people don't want to buy a messy business. They want to buy a business that's making money and will continue to do so. So if that's ever something you've ever considered, start documenting now.
Even if you haven't considered it.
Yep, absolutely, because
Because
you never know what will happen in the future.
exactly 3 to 5 years down the road, you're like, oh, well, I want an exit plan. Well, if you had
Hmm.
started that 3 to 5 years earlier, you'd be closer to your exit
Yep.
plan. So, speaking of exit plans, the transition of your husband getting out of the service and the two of you getting out of military life and into civilian life. I know you and I have talked, and it wasn't that bad of a transition, but talk about that and maybe what things you had in place, because it sounds like you had some things in place that made
Hmm.
that transition easier, so that any of my viewers that are watching right now that are getting ready to make that transition and get out, whether it be after a few years or retirement, what are some of those things you did to make that a smoother transition?
So we made sure that we had non-military friends. We were staying in the Tacoma area for a couple of years after we got out, and we had some friends that were we had just connected with kind of naturally, just interacting in the area and going to church and those kinds of things. And they were former military, so they also understood that. Because we were staying in a military space, that definitely helped finding those former military connections. But just to have somebody, you know, we could talk to that we didn't just cut off. Because a lot of times when you move off base, because we lived on post for most of our time, when you move off post, when you are no longer seeing those people all the time, living under the same, you know, that same atmosphere of being active military, there's a big difference. And so it was nice to have somebody outside of that where it didn't feel, that didn't change our relationship just because we weren't in the military anymore. So that was really big for us. And for us, we were also really involved in our church. So again, having something outside of the military, whether that's a church, a charity, whatever that it is that you were interested in. This, again, having something that ties you to something that you care about, that you're involved in, and gives you something to do that's not specifically tied to your military and the career there.
Awesome. Great advice. And any other advice you would give somebody considering, other than, you know, making those ties outside? Do you have any advice for those that are 3 to 5 years from retirement that may be thinking about getting in business? Do you have any tips for them? Or
So I did before like I said, I started really hobby level when I started. And so it was just a lot of exploring. What am I good at? What did I want to do? What's even available out there? Because I had never, I started as a VA or a virtual assistant, and that was something that I hadn't really heard of until I just started Googling work from home. And that just kept coming up. So I would definitely recommend, if that's something you even might be interested in, just see what's out there, because you can do just about anything you want as your own business. And so it's just a matter of learning the ropes, learning kind of some of the tools that are out there, and excuse me, and finding a mentor or a coach to help you really get that established once you decide that's really what you want to do.
awesome. Boy, I just had something in my head and it just popped out. Any last words of advice or anything you want to share, like a special or anything you want to share with the viewers? And of course, we'll put your contact information. I've already tagged your business page in that, but Katelyn will put her contact information down below in the comments when we get done. But any last words of wisdom for a military spouse? Or
I would say to enjoy your time as a military spouse, because it is very unique and it's not something that a large majority of the population gets to experience. There are obviously plenty of things to stress and worry and all of that about, but there are also things to enjoy, whether it's the different friends you get to make, the places you get to explore, the independence you get to learn that maybe you didn't think you needed or didn't realize you didn't have, those kinds of things. So just, I encourage you to look for the positives in it, regardless of what's going on around you.
awesome. Yeah, I'm trying to remember who it is, the quote. Was it Rockefeller that said he was asked, how did he make so many millionaires? And he said, I went in looking for the gold, not for the dirt.
Yep.
So look for the positive, look for the silver lining in everything. And it's amazing the skills and the things that you learn in the military that we don't realize put us, both spouses and military members, sometimes, not always, but sometimes head and shoulders above our counterparts in the civilian world, because they don't get to be stretched and think outside the box like the military does. So I encourage all of you, if you're considering a business, reach out to me, reach out to Katelyn. I'm sure she'd be willing to have a conversation with you. There are veteran networking groups all across the country. I'm sure there's some. Texas is a huge military state, so I'm sure there's some down there. There's definitely some here in Colorado Springs. So please reach out to us, get connected to us. We'd love to get to know you better and answer any questions you have and help you navigate that transition out of the service, or if you're already out and you're struggling and you're just not sure what you want to do, you're welcome to reach out to me, and we'll have a conversation, and I'll hook you into my network and see what might be a good fit for you. So with that, thanks again, Katelyn, for being on today. I really appreciate it. And if you're watching, please reach out to Katelyn and tap in. I know she's got lots of great resources if you're a business. And with that, I look forward to seeing everybody next Monday on Military Mondays. Bye, everyone.